And now, the survival show that once survived sunbathing in the Arctic with polar bears. In this ITRH Book Club episode, we sit down with Kermit Jones. He's going to tell us about his book that teaches kids, and many adults, all about firearms safety. Maybe you don't have kids, but you'll still enjoy this episode because, well, guns. And Kermit's actually a lot of fun. Howdy and welcome to In the Rabbit Hole's Urban Survival Podcast. This is episode number 170. I'm your host, Aaron, and you are in the rabbit hole, safe and sound. As many of you know, I'm recently married, and also not exactly a spring chicken. So kids are a pressing concern, well, more so for my parents than me and her parents, but, you know, pressure is pressure. And so that means we'll be making instead of just practicing. And if you're listening to this show, you may know we like our guns a whole lot. So naturally, kids and guns are going to intersect in our house soon. Maybe yours too, or maybe you're already wrestling with, or maybe you know someone in a similar position. It's a seemingly tricky subject, but for your listening pleasure today, we've got Kermit Jones, author of Prepper Pete's Gun of a Son, a gun safety book for kids. Kermit, welcome to In the Rabbit Hole.
Howdy, Aaron. Great to be here. How's it going?
It is going well, man. We finally got you on In the Rabbit Hole. I know you and I have been trying to get this together for a while now.
Exciting, too. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thanks. So, Kermit, for the listeners, what do you do, man?
I'm a big fan of breathing.
Yes.
Pretty much every day I like to try and do that the best that I can.
Yeah.
But my day job at the moment, I'm actually a Navy chaplain, and I'm a reservist. So I'm in the middle of a 3-year recall to active duty. And outside of that, I work as a government employee, basically.
Okay. All right. Well, so now let's dive into your book, and we'll set the stage here for people. First, the book is about kids and gun safety. What makes you an expert on that topic?
I think the two things that would intersect the most are, first, I have kids.
Yes.
Which is helpful.
Yeah.
And two, I have guns. So there you go.
There you go. I think you might be an expert.
Haven't lost anybody yet. But that's a plus. But I've, had a lot of time around guns just from the military perspective and raising my kids and teaching them, and went to a lot of people to try and get information to put the best product forth that I could to help teach them safely.
Awesome. So let's really get into that for a minute. Tell us about it. What prompted you to write Pete's Gun of a Son?
So part of it was I'm not going to say I'm new to like prepping, and I know that we're talking about gun safety and kids specifically, but as I had kind of come out and had started working through a lot of it, there was a lot of areas of life I was having to explain to my kids, why are we doing this? Why are we storing things? Why are we doing these things? And I grew up kind of self-sufficient. And I was living in the country at the time with my kids. So they knew what it was like for the power to be out for a time, that sort of thing. And as I was learning those things, I was trying to figure out how to convey them to my children in a way that makes sense to them. Because kids think on a very different level of practicality and real worldness. In the process of doing that is when I really started taking a higher interest in guns, realizing at that moment how much of my adult lifehood I had missed out on. Not that I didn't like guns up until that point. I just didn't own a lot. And as we started purchasing them and bringing them into the house, safety became a paramount concern for my wife and I, because we wanted to make sure that our kids were safe. And so in the process of doing that, I'd always had exposure to them in the military, but trying to figure out how to expose them to my kids in a safe way. I had already I had two Prepper Pete books out the door. And I basically paused the series that I was working on and started writing Prepper Pete's Gun of a Son, just so I could explain the process to my kids as we were kind of learning together as a family.
Oh, cool. Okay. So because this seems like we said a minute ago, kind of a tricky subject. What was the biggest challenge in writing a book like this, especially as you're going through the process personally?
I think the biggest challenge was finding balance. And that balance is between not scaring your kids, but also realizing that the best way to keep your kids from being scared is to educate them. teaching them the critical thinking skills as far as why it works, that sort of thing, exposure, and conveying the information in a way that got the point across without being too simplistic, but not being too complicated. And that balance, I think, is a really hard part of writing any children's book in particular, but especially when you're dealing with something as important and life or death like guns.
Mm-hmm. So making it simple, approachable. I mean, that anytime you try to simplify anything, that's pretty tricky. But I think, yeah, this seems like it would be tough to try to make gun safety super simple without, oh my God, you're going to die. You're going to blow off, you shoot your eye out, kid, or something like that. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I also dealt with the issue of, I really enjoy guns, but you can't really say, let's go have fun with guns. Because when you tell that to your kids, then it kind of like turning them into a toy. So teaching them a healthy respect at the same time. But yeah, that was probably the hardest part of the whole process.
Wow, that's tricky. Yeah, I would have never thought of that before. But yeah, because I mean, I know I get kind of giddy when it's time to play with guns. So it makes sense. Kermit, let's break for this quick announcement. Listeners, hey, do you get value out of each episode? As a matter of fact, do you get at least $2.50 worth of value out of ITRH in general? Well, you should see what we do for members. Check it out today by visiting ITRH.net. Members get all kinds of cool benefits, things such as access to episodes a day early, an invitation to the secret ITRH Armada Facebook group so you can chat with myself and other listeners all day long, and of course, all kinds of other shenanigans and things that get going on in that group. Encrypted forums so you can chat securely with like-minded people about preparedness. A free copy of the book, Owning Your Survival, 9 Steps for Surviving, Survival and Preparedness. Access to our famous Bob and Emergency Kits video course with downloadable checklists and spreadsheets. My insane ammo inventory spreadsheet. You'll finally have instant access to knowing what you've got on hand at any moment. Because let's face it, sometimes we just want to know right then and there, how many bullets do I have? Access to every episode ever produced by ITRH, including one with a famous knife maker that was never aired. That's over 160 hours of survival conversations to help you get better prepared. And we're adding new stuff all the time, and that's just some of the benefits. Again, visit ITRH.net to learn more and become part of the ITRH Roving Horde Armada. Again, ITRH.net. You'll be helping the show stay safe and sound that helps you stay safe and sound. Now, back to Kermit. You have daughters, right?
I do. I have 4 daughters.
Oh, man, that's more power to you. So, did you have instances where like some kids really caught into it and some of the daughters were kind of scared of it or didn't really like it? How did that work out for you?
So the interesting thing is I have 4 daughters. Currently, their ages, I have a teenager now.
Oh, man.
I'm the father of a teenager.
Oh,
I need a moment. Okay, I'm good.
Teenage daughter. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so the ages are roughly, they're 2 years apart.
Okay.
So just turned 13 and then 2 years down for each one. The interesting part is that with 4 daughters, each one of them has a completely opposite personality. Don't ask me how that happens. Mathematically, it's impossible. I know.
Okay.
But one thing that I've learned is that each one requires a different approach to teaching. Mm-hmm. And each one has a different personality and an interest and desires. And there are different aspects that I actually have to focus on with each each child or daughter when I'm talking to them. So one of my daughters is kind of okay, yes, I'd like to learn. I've shot the gun. I'm good. And, no desire to go Rambo at all, which is good. I've got another daughter that's like, oh, can we go shoot? And, she kind of gets excited like I do. And taking her through the process is a very different aspect because she wanted to pull the trigger, whereas the first one didn't. And so working through each one of them and understanding the nuances as far as how to approach them to get the safety aspect across, but also to let them enjoy it. And I think one of the key things is not forcing it on them. And I talk about that like with parental prepping and my attitude towards that. But it just kind of going at a pace that they're comfortable with has been a key aspect of teaching them.
Interesting. So with the one that wasn't all necessarily that interesting, I mean, practice often is so important with guns because it is a diminishing skill. Do you run into instances where you're having to incentivize getting certain daughters to the range versus other daughters where you're like, calm down, calm down? How does that work out?
That's an excellent question to ask it like that. And I haven't really been stuck with that because I think it's part of an expected part of it of, we have guns. You need to know how to use it. Let's go practice real quick and working with them, but them understanding too that, hey, we're going to go to the range and you don't have to shoot like 500 rounds today. I just need you to take me through the process of ensuring that you know the safety, ensuring you know the skill set. And I'm not looking to turn each one of my kids into a sharpshooter, crack shot type thing.
Hmm.
My one that gets excited, she is a pretty awesome shot that impresses people from time to time. But for the most part, I'm more interested with the muscle memory mechanics of safety aspects, treating the weapon properly, that sort of thing. It's not a you have to become as proficient as a firearm as I want you to be.
Hmm.
I think that's kind of worked fairly well.
Okay. So the name of your series is all Prepper Pete does X or Y, but the Prepper Pete part is important. But is the information in this book and in your other books, which we'll talk about in some other episodes, but is the information approachable for anyone, or is it really just geared for preppers? I ask because maybe somebody listening doesn't have kids, but a buddy who isn't a prepper does have kids, and they're thinking and guns, and they're thinking, maybe this would be good for them. Is it all you must be a prepper and you must use guns, or is it how did you find that balance in the book?
So the interesting thing, and I think that if you can explain something at a level that children understand it, then that makes it very easy for adults to understand it. I do a children's sermon every Sunday at church,
Hmm.
and what I always tell people is children's sermons are not for children. They're explained in that
Interesting.
way.
Uh-huh.
They get a point across very clearly, but usually I'm kind of looking over my shoulder at the adults because they need to get it just as importantly as children do.
Hmm.
And safety from a gun perspective for a child is just as important for an adult. So is the target audience aimed at children? Well, absolutely, but it's also aimed at people that maybe have nieces or nephews, or I deal with a lot of people that are adults that have kids that come to their house, or their grandparents or something, and so they want something they can broach the topic because a lot of parents today may not have guns in the house. Maybe they're not comfortable with it. It gives them a connection point. The other aspect is that I have had peers of mine that are maybe new to prepping, or maybe they see where society is, and they've said, "Hey, I'd like to get a gun, but haven't you written a book on gun safety?" And I'm like, "Well, sure." And so they'll come over, and I've actually gone through the book with adults before because the reality is the principles treat, never, keep, and how you handle a weapon and the safety aspects. It doesn't change. The rules are the same for a kid as for an adult.
Mm.
And so it is an easy way. It's a very quick way to explain it to adults without kind of getting bogged down. Because I think the problem is like anything, prepping or guns or otherwise, we get so overloaded with the amount of information that's out there that it's hard to distill it down. So I think it works well for working with adults too. And if they know somebody that has kids or kids are at their house, they can broach the topic in kind of a friendly way without looking like the kook job or the crazy uncle type thing.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
allows you to broach the topic in a safe manner.
Okay. To circle back to your daughters for a minute and not in a weird way, I think as men, manly men, we tend to view girls differently. What was your biggest fear when trying to teach your daughters about gun safety? Because we think, we'll all be honest here. We think we're going to have a boy, and that boy is going to like guns and football and rough and tumble and things, and he's going to scratch and spit
Bacon.
and yes, and
Yeah.
cuss with his friends off to the corner that we shouldn't know about. But we expect these things. But with our daughters, I think as men, we tend to be a little more hesitant about that kind of thing. How did that come up for you?
It's interesting. We're in a society today where it's not like the one we grew up in.
Right.
You know, well, gender neutral toys, and we don't do the gender thing where girls do pink and princesses, and
Yeah.
I'm a little old school.
Yeah.
We do the gender thing. So my girls like pink and purple, and I'm perfectly fine with that. If they want blue, I don't have a problem with that either. But I'm not gonna force neutrality on them either. And I have one of mine's kind of a tomboy,
Mhm.
acts a lot like me, has the same sarcastic um, tendencies at times. Kids are very interesting reflection of their parents at times.
Mm,
And so I did kind of have that as kind of, I don't want to turn them into sons by any stretch. And
right.
I'm blessed with the fact that they're daughters. But there is that timidness as far as sometimes that comes out in the female gender. And I don't mean that and I don't want to offend any of your listeners, obviously, that
Mhm.
may be listening in. But if you take a bunch of young girls and put them together, they're usually going to end up playing dress up or princess or something that's kind of congenial and together. And if you put a bunch of boys together, they're going to find sticks and start beating the tar out of each other and pointing them at
Yes.
each other and say, "Bang, you're dead." I mean, so
Yeah.
that's just part of it. And it's not that my girls don't do that at times, but there is a very difference. And I think when it comes to guns, helping them get past that fear of like when the gun first goes off and it kicks in their hand and they want to drop it or something like that. That was kind of a concern for me until I had manly man, come over and shoot a gun, and he dropped it after he shot it. I'm like, really? Even my 12-year-old does better than that. So I think on the one hand we tend to stereotype our kids, and that's true of any parent, doesn't matter gender or age.
Mm,
We stereotype thinking what they should or shouldn't be, and the reality is we need to step back and assess where they're at. And I think that's critical in the gun safety. When people ask me how young is too young, that's not a number for me to give you. That's a you knowing your kid and understanding where they are from a maturity level. And same thing with my daughters. Just because they're girls doesn't necessarily pigeonhole them into something. I've got one that uh, I'm pretty sure that she could hold her own against any guy her age,
mm.
and then I've got one that's a bit more nice. I don't know what word to insert there. Sorry.
I gotcha. I gotcha. So now you brought up an interesting point that I wanted to get us to in a bit, which was how young is too young. And you just kind of answered that, but can you unpack that? It's really, when you say it's kind of up to the parent, like what does that entail? As somebody who doesn't have kids yet, what does that entail? Like, what am I looking forward to?
Right. I'm so excited for you too. You have no idea. It's awesome to relive life, like knowing what you know and then seeing it through their eyes.
Uh-huh.
I think that it's a double-edged sword, and unfortunately, we live in a society where people want their kids to grow up too fast. If you look at it compared to even what we grew up with, as far as what's expected of kids, and unfortunately, a lot of parents have that attitude, and I hate to say it, but it's out of convenience.
Hmm.
They, I would argue, let their kids watch movies that they shouldn't, that sort of thing, and they try and grow them so they can have a conversation because they want to be friends with them instead of being their parents, and
Mm,
those aren't the same thing,
mhm.
and they shouldn't be. So on the one hand, not letting your kids grow up too fast. On the other, is underestimating the depth of maturity your kids can have. And if you listen to parents who teach their kids different things, and I've kind of watched this in different circles since I started paying attention to it. You'll see that most parents, when they go to teach their kids something, use very leading questions that has very big assumptions, and it kind of takes the question in a direction of a yes or no answer from the kid,
Mm.
and the kid knows what they're supposed to answer, so they're going to nod their head yes, and the parents like, oh, see, Johnny's got it. If it, and there's a I saw it on Facebook, it must be true, but there was a video that was on there a while back, and they took a bunch of like fifth or sixth graders and some third and fourth graders, and they tried to see if they could pass the basic handgun exam,
Mm.
because it asked questions like, do you point a gun at someone? No. And so these kids pass the exam, right?
Mhm.
But the reality is, asking them a yes or no question like that, as opposed to asking an open-ended question,
Mm.
those are two different things from a comprehension perspective. And when you
Yeah.
start talking about guns and never point the muzzle at something you don't intend to shoot or destroy, it's one thing to say, well, should you point the gun at someone? No, as to say, explain to me what this means. And your kid being able to explain that in their own words, I mean, that is a tremendous. We teach regurgitation and memorization in our school system. Unfortunately, we teach it in churches and synagogues,
Yeah.
that sort of stuff. And a lot of times, if you stop and the kid recites something, and you're like, that was a great job, and then you go, well, so tell me what that means. And if you just sit back and let them talk for a minute, and you see like the fear that comes into their eyes. And then you're like,
Yeah.
oh, it's such a disappointment. But being able to encourage them to a point of understanding is key. And I think that it does really change it changes the level of understanding as far as how young's too young, when's the right age. The reality is you have to know your kid, and you should be able to ask them some open-ended questions and then give you an answer that is cogent, for lack of a better word.
Mm.
And, when you read Prepper Pete's Gun of a Son, the first thing he teaches is treat, never keep, keep. Treat every weapon as if it's loaded. Never point the weapon in something you don't intend to point or shoot or destroy. Keep your finger off the trigger. Keep the weapon on safe. And so those are the 4 things. But if I ask my kids, what are the 4 primary rules? They can all spout off treat, never keep, keep. And then I say, okay, what's that mean? And then they have to go through and do that. Okay, tell me what that means. And you drill down each time. And by doing that a couple of times, now they're showing me they comprehend. And the treat, never keep, keep really is an easy way to remember something far bigger than just those 4 words. But just because they can spout something back to me doesn't signify to me as a father that they understand it.
That's an important distinction that I don't think I would have thought of. I don't spend much time educating anymore. So, but that's interesting. I mean, that ensuring that the comprehension is there, and forcing somebody to regurgitate it back. What was it? Watch, do, teach, I think is the
right.
Yeah. Okay. Wow, that makes a lot of sense. What do you think is the biggest mistake parents make when they try to talk to their kids about gun safety?
Can I go top 3?
Sure.
No, I think that step 1 is a lot of parents don't have enough confidence in their own skill set with gun safety. There have been studies where they've taken people who were like strictly anti-gun people and taken them to a safety class and allowed them to shoot a weapon, and their views of guns have actually changed at the end of that training, which I find very fascinating. The vast majority of people that I talk to that are anti-gun, when it really gets down to it and you just ask them, so have you ever taken a gun safety class and actually shot one? Oh, and I'm like, yeah, we're done. If you can't even have that experience, the conversation's over. And I'm joking. I do try to engage them because I'm trying to bring them to it. But I think that a lot of times parents don't give themselves enough credit to be able to teach these things. And so if you ask most parents, who's responsible for your child's education? The vast majority of parents, unfortunately, in America are going to say the school system, the state, the education system. And my response is always, no, you, the parent, you are the one responsible for making sure your child is educated. So when it comes to gun safety, it's not the gun safety class instructor that's in charge. It's not the whatever. It is you, the parent. And so a lot of times what I'll do with parents is they'll make the mistake of, and I had this happen several times when I lived in Virginia. My backyard was 300 acres of soybean field. So on a Sunday afternoon, if I wanted to go out and shoot a bunch of skeet, or my wife didn't like the clay we shot potatoes, they explode really cool, by the way, if you hit them.
I'm going to have to try that.
And you can reuse them and chuck them like a baseball. It's like baseball practice too. It's a great day. But I had people that would be like, hey, my son's having a birthday. For his birthday, I'd like to bring him over and teach him how to shoot in your backyard. Do you mind? I'd be like, oh man, bring it. And I'd be like, so are you ready to teach him? And I would actually sit down with the parent and I would go through, and instead of me being the teacher and them just being like, here, teach him, I'd be like, no. You need to be able to teach this to your kid because you're the one they're going to listen to and respect. And I would actually take time to teach the parent for them to teach the kid. And I would be there the whole time to work with them. And I'm not a certified NRA instructor or anything like that, but just teaching those safety rules. I think the biggest mistake parents make is they try and offload the responsibility.
Yeah.
And they don't realize they are the one that should be responsible for teaching their kids what they're going to teach them.
This goes back to something we were talking about a bit with age. At what age should parents start engaging with a child to teach them about gun safety?
And that's a great question, which is why you host a podcast. I don't think that it's ever too young to start. Now, and that goes within reason. If you look at the Prepper Pete books, though, they are targeted from the picture book style of them. They are targeted pretty much the youngest age you're going to get to. 3 years old, something like that. I've had people read it to 2-year-olds because I don't think that teaching them respect at that age is too young. And I find it very interesting. Oh, well, that's too young to teach about guns. Okay, so you just let them go around and pull like light sockets out of, plugs out of the light socket. You let them play with matches. You let them play with knives. you let them get into the oven or reach up to the stove. No, you teach them all those things from the earliest age possible.
Yeah.
And I think that the same thing is true of guns. So I don't think that it's ever too young to teach the safety as far as teaching them how to shoot when they're able to handle a weapon safely.
Yeah.
That would be my response.
Yeah, I think that was, I mean, when I was a volunteer with Project Appleseed, that time we cut it off, I think it was 12, but it was really more just to have because you have to, with an organization that big and everything else, you just kind of have to have a line in the sand where you're like, nothing younger than this. And going back to boys versus girls for a second, I think it was funny. We always had to watch the boys a lot more carefully than we had to watch the girls, because the boys would be like, look what I just did, and they're like, wait, and the little girls
flinging it around all over the place.
The girls are like, can I move? Can I, like, they follow directions, but that's interesting that, you make a really great point there about, we wouldn't let our kids run around and stick forks in wall sockets.
My parents did, but
that was.
But I survived.
That was like what, the 60s and 70s. I mean, that was how we did it back then. You learned the hard way. You touch that. You go ahead and touch that stove. You see what happens. That was how our parents did it. You see what happens. See how that works out.
Now they call CPS on you.
Yeah, or get on YouTube and make a video about it or something. So what advice would you give somebody who? Because you said you actually came to firearms late. What advice would you give to someone that is now considering firearms and has kids, or is in a position like me where they're about to have kids, or kids are in the relative near future? What advice would you give them?
So I'd say there's a couple of rules that I would say. First off, if you're not married, you should go buy a bunch of firearms before you get married.
That's good advice.
That way there's a understanding and an expectation that, purchasing a several $100 firearm is not a big deal.
Yeah.
For me, there was some justification involved as to, well, why do we need to buy one now? And I'm like, because this is America.
Because America. Yeah.
And my wife, to be fair to my wife, she grew up all of her uncles hunted on a regular basis. Her dad, I mean, they had guns, that sort of stuff. So it wasn't like some huge overcoming that I had to do. But, when I got married, I was into scuba diving and computers, which I think golf might be the only more expensive hobby that's out there.
Pretty much.
Guns, on the other hand, and ammo have gone up.
Yeah.
More than gold or silver as far as investment goes. So go buy a bunch of guns. That's rule number one. And if you're going to get into it big. Now, that being said, I wouldn't say if you're getting into prepping, go buy a bunch of guns, because you got other things to spend it on. But if you're going to get into guns, go big or go home. That's that's rule number one.
Yeah.
Rule number two, though, is take it in baby steps. And I know that goes against the advice of rule number one, but you don't have to have the most tricked out tactical rifle. Start with the basics. Start with what's practical, and go find someone that you trust that can help walk you through the steps. And that's what I did. So I grew up. I had a 22 rifle growing up, bolt action. I had a great time with it. When I went to college, I graduated from college. I shot firearms in college. I went to the Naval Academy. I was in the military. I had to qualify every year. Then I became a chaplain. Sometimes I would just go play with them and, shoot better than some of the people I was with, which kind of ticked them off because I'm not allowed to have a firearm in combat.
Wait. I have to, not to interrupt you, but to interrupt you. You're not allowed to have a firearm in combat?
No, DOD or U.S. chaplains are non-combatants strictly. And so we are not allowed to have a weapon.
I guess is that combat, to kind of keep y'all from being fired upon during combat?
Yeah, because the enemy would never target us.
Yeah, never.
It's U.S. policy. It's actually it's fairly, I'll say fairly new.
Okay.
But they do give us someone that's supposed to be like our bodyguard, so to speak.
Oh, that's nice of them. Okay. All right.
Yeah, 19-year-old that. Okay, anyway.
Yeah.
We can discuss politics at a later time. I'm good with that, but no, I'm not allowed to carry a firearm or to qualify on a firearm as a chaplain. So that's kind of interesting. So when I came through the gate the first time here, I was like, "Hi, I'm the new chaplain for base. I need to declare some firearms that are in my trunk." And the gate guards are all like, I'm one of those chaplains, baby." But oh wow, we sidetracked. Talk about a rabbit hole.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why you named it that.
That's part of the reason why we named it that. But so going back to it, and getting into advice for people that are looking for guns for
Yeah.
the first time that also either have kids or, have kids. We
Find
went big or
mentors.
went home, but, made sure that the
Yeah.
wife understood early on about the guns,
Take baby
or if a
steps.
wife, you making sure that the guy coming into your life understands about guns. And then we had the next one.
Yeah, take baby steps. And then the third
Yeah.
one, and I think probably the bigger one is find a mentor. And
Mm,
so what I did was when we decided, hey, look, we're actually going to get into this, and defense is becoming an issue, and personal defense and that sort of stuff. I went and found at the time it happened to be my brother-in-law. He's like said, dude, I want to buy a gun. He's like, okay, I'll bring a couple down for you to try out. He shows up and he like 5 trips into the later, it's like I've got a picture of my bedroom floor with like 30 firearms on it, and I'm just like, this is so awesome. So, but he took me through like each firearm. These are the pros, these are the cons. This is considerations you need to have. And that allowed me to make an informed decision as opposed to going into a gun shop where somebody just wants to sell me something.
right.
And so find someone that you trust that can take you through those steps and let them work with you as you go through it. I think that's probably the key thing. And take a safety class, an official, you can go take one. Most gun shops offer it, but find someone that you trust that's in your life that you can work with that can help you navigate firearms.
3 great pieces of advice. And speaking of, as long as we're on the number 3, what would you say are the 3 biggest takeaways from your book when talking to kids about guns?
The 3 biggest takeaways that I would say from the book is respect for firearms. They respect a healthy respect for firearms and not to be afraid of them. I think the second one is understanding the rules themselves. Treat, never, keep is the first 4, but it goes into another set as far as how to do it and how to shoot safely, that sort of stuff. So healthy respect. The next one would be the actual safety rules themselves. And the third one is understanding that education is the key. And I don't know that I would say that that's a takeaway for kids so much as parents. When we talk about knowledge is power, I think that in the realm of firearms, knowledge is safety. And so we fear what we don't know. And when we fear things, that's when we tend to get in trouble and make dumb decisions. So I think that probably the number one takeaway from adults is knowledge is key. And then for your kids, just making sure they have a respect for firearms and that they actually stay safe in the process of doing them.
Very good. So now, how can people connect with you, Kermit, and keep up with the great work that you're doing and see your wonderful catalog of books?
So the primary website is prepperpeteandfriends.com. You'll see a highlight of each one of the books. It has some downloads on the gun safety book as far as the gun safety contract parents can sign. But that's prepperpeteandfriends.com. And then on Facebook, facebook.com/prepperpeteandfriends. And I'm not super active on social media, but I do try and engage. And if someone ever emails me, I try to respond right away and have a good time interacting with them.
Awesome. Well, Kermit, man, I sure appreciate you coming on today and sharing this knowledge with us. And I'm looking forward already to having you on to talk about your other books.
Appreciate it, Aaron. Hope you have a great day.
Thanks. You too.
Stay safe.
Listeners, remember, ITRH will be going on summer break soon. That means the final episode will be May 25th. Since ITRH summer shorts were so well received last summer, we're doing it again. So you won't be left without any ITRH for the summer. They'll just be short 7 to 15 minute episodes, probably on the order of about every 3 weeks. For those of you that are new here and don't know what ITRH summer shorts are all about, I'll explain quickly. Here goes. ITRH goes on break for a few months every summer, but we don't go totally off the air. You'll get short episodes on a less frequent basis, about 1 every 3 weeks. Then we'll be back August 1st. Next announcement. Today's episode was brought to you by Audible. Hey, you guys obviously enjoy consuming information and entertainment through audio. I do too. It makes it a lot easier. It really does. And it's so great. I've fallen in love with Audible for the last few years because I'm able to consume so many more books. There were so many books that, I just work would get in the way and life would get in the way. And there's all that extra time while you're driving or mowing the yard or going fishing or doing whatever that you've got your hands busy and you can't really be sitting there reading a book, or if you're driving, you really shouldn't be reading a book. So that's where Audible comes in, just like podcasts. And they are a sponsor of the ITRH Book Club episodes. Be sure to check them out and get your 30-day free trial and free audiobook by visiting audibletrial.com/ITRH. The ITRH is important. Lets them know we sent you. And it ensures that you get your 30-day free trial and free book. Again, check them out today. audibletrial.com/ITRH. And of course, hey, do you get value out of each episode? As a matter of fact, do you get at least $2.50 worth of value out of ITRH in general? Well, you should see what we do for members. Check it out today by visiting ITRH.net. Members get all kinds of cool benefits. Things such as access to episodes a day early, an invitation to the secret ITRH Armada Facebook group so you can chat with myself and other listeners all day long, and of course, all kinds of other shenanigans and things that get going on in that group. Encrypted forums so you can chat securely with like-minded people about preparedness. A free copy of the book, Owning Your Survival, 9 Steps for Surviving, Survival and Preparedness. Access to our famous Bob and Emergency Kits video course with downloadable checklists and spreadsheets. My insane ammo inventory spreadsheet. You'll finally have instant access to knowing what you've got on hand at any moment. Because let's face it, sometimes we just want to know right then and there, how many bullets do I have? Access to every episode ever produced by ITRH, including one with a famous knife maker that was never aired. That's over 160 hours of survival conversations to help you get better prepared. And we're adding new stuff all the time, and that's just some of the benefits. Again, visit ITRH.net to learn more and become part of the ITRH Roving Horde Armada. Again, ITRH.net. You'll be helping the show stay safe and sound that helps you stay safe and sound. With that, we wrap up episode number 170 from the Lone Star State. Till next time, stay safe and sound.